I would imagine almost each of you or all of you knew Dusty. You maybe didn't know him by name, but you remembered the tall man that came to our church that carried a backpack and had a bandana. And I've heard more than one say he was a good looking man. And he was. Do we have a picture? There's Dusty. There's kind of a shot. Can we show a couple of pictures, Sandra, of Dusty when he was young? That's Dusty at a picnic with Tommy. Here's Dusty with a little baby in his arms. And by the way, the little baby is right here. Her name is Michelle. Would you stand up, Michelle? This is Dusty's daughter. Yeah, let's look at all of those. These are really cute. And I mean, Dusty wasn't normal handsome. He was rock star handsome. You'll see. He was like amazing handsome. Look at those guns. That's good. That's the one. Looks like a rock star, doesn't it? That's Dusty. But when I came to Hapeville, when we came to Hapeville 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, we met Dusty shortly after we came here, and he was kind of quiet, and we knew that he kind of lived on the street, and but he was a wonderful guy, nice guy, quiet, kept to himself. And for those of you who maybe didn't know, Dusty passed away Thursday a week ago, or was found Thursday morning a week ago. And so we wanted to honor him and honor Michelle, who has become a really good friend, and give you a chance to kind of grieve with us about Dusty. He is survived by his daughter Michelle. She has two precious children, so he has two grandchildren. He also has a sister who lives in Alabama. Let me tell you a little bit about Dusty's story, because he was such a quiet man. Even his best friends, I know Scott is here and Tommy is here, even his best friends, when you ask him about his history, they'd say he didn't talk much about his history. So let me tell you just a few of the things that we know about Dusty's past. When he was 9 years old, his mother died of cancer, and he and his sister were moved to Birmingham to a Christian school / orphanage, and they were supposed to stay a short time, and then some family members were going to get them. But for whatever reason, that never happened, and Dusty lived in the orphanage until he graduated high school, Christian school, graduated high school, and but never had any family members come and take him. Dusty was in the Navy. Sometimes we'll have people who in our church who they really honor the people in the military, and they don't think that sometimes the guy that's got the backpack that's on the street corner that is really struggling with life, that he's come out of the military. And Dusty did his military time. He was in the Navy. Dusty was an electrician. He, as a young dad, he traveled, was on the road as an electrician, and that's Michelle's memory of him is when he left, he had just been gone a lot as a traveling electrician. He traveled with his dad. He got reunited with his dad after a while, and he traveled with his dad, who was a truck driver in California, for a short period of time, and that didn't work out. But Dusty kind of had a wandering spirit. I use the word wanderer in the message today, wisdom for our wanderings, because Dusty was one who wandered and liked to travel, liked to be on the road. He moved to Hapeville many years ago. He actually worked at In-Town Suites as a maintenance man, and for several years. And I'll tell you what happened a couple of years ago. Jane and I were at this place where children jump on these balloons. I don't even know what it is. A jumpy place is what we call it, jumpy thing. I don't know. Anyway, I'm there one day, and I get a phone call, and a young lady's on the phone, and she said, "Are you Pastor Ray?" I said, "I am." And she said, "I'm Michelle. Do you know a man named Dusty?" And I said, "I do." And she said, "I'm his daughter." And I said, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And so we started talking, and she told me that her dad left when she was about 4, and that she had brief contact with him when she was 16, but really had not seen him. She is a nurse. She lives in Columbus, Georgia. She has done really well in her life. And Dusty had sent a Christmas card to his ex-in-laws, not realizing that his ex-wife had passed away. The in-laws, Michelle's grandparents, gave the card to her. It had a return address, the village church. And so she was able to get in contact with me. So Michelle said, I just wanted you to know who I am. And I said, and we talked, and she said, I'd like to see my dad. I said, great. So she arranged to come up on one Sunday. And y'all, I never have been more nervous in my whole life, because I was excited but nervous, didn't know what was going to happen. And so got all worked up about this great reunion, and then Dusty didn't come to church. And Michelle was here and Dusty wasn't here, but some of our faithful folks said, we'll find him. And they went out and they found him. And so I never will forget, we were right back there, and Michelle was standing kind of at the door. Dusty was standing between her, and he was looking at me. I was standing in the back. And I said, Dusty, I got a Christmas present for you. And he said, really? And he was so excited. And I said, your daughter is here. She's standing behind you. She wants to meet you. And he turned around, and I have never seen a man smile so big in my whole life than Dusty. And that was the way that he and Michelle got reacquainted. He was proud of her. Scott told me that he wore out the pictures he had of Michelle and showed them to everybody and wanted everybody to know how successful she had become. Dusty never got victory over his addictions. His addictions are what killed him. And that's sad, and it's just a part of life. It's a part of what happens to some people. My memories of Dusty are he was very, very smart, very, very smart. He read a lot. If you ever saw Dusty anywhere in Hapeville, he was sitting and he was reading. And he knew the Bible. He loved God. He knew the Bible. And anytime I would throw into my sermon something from AA, he'd get up and walk out. He didn't like anything I had to say about AA. He just didn't like it. And he liked me preaching, but he didn't like me talking about AA. So anyway, he was kind of a hard head on some of that stuff. I asked Michelle about Dusty, and she said that her aunt told her he was a very special person. And one day her aunt would tell her how special he was. And so I can't wait to learn more in time about how special Dusty was. Michelle also said he had a good heart. And she's so wise. She's so wise, because I thought she was going to be devastated when she saw her dad and realized that he wasn't going to come off the road. He wasn't going to come off the road. I mean, he wasn't going to, he lived the way he lived, and whenever you tried to offer him something else, the alcohol had too strong a grip on him. And so I was afraid it was going to devastate her, but she was so mature. It's like she was this 50-year-old wise woman in this 25, 26-year-old person. And she just knew that was her dad. And she loved him as well as she could, but she just knew that the addictions were very, very strong. She said this, Dad just didn't know how to love really or form attachments. And it made me think about the little boy that was left in an orphanage. And I thought I could understand that. Dusty had some issues. Alcoholism was one. And I have issues. And I would imagine, if you're honest, you have issues. I love that the Village Church, that doesn't define somebody, their issues. We all have issues. Let me tell you the second thing I want to say after talking about Dusty's past. And I know this better than I know anything in this world. I am more sure of this. Dusty was loved by God. Dusty was loved by God. Our being accepted by God is not based on our performance or our perfection. It is based wholly on God's goodness and His grace. Can I say that again? Our acceptance by God is not based on our performance or our perfection. It is based totally, wholly on God's goodness and His grace. So anybody thinks they're going to waltz into heaven on their goodness. Can I tell you something? It doesn't happen that way. We will waltz into heaven because Jesus is good enough. Jesus is the one that is good enough. Jesus is the one who says, my grace is sufficient for you. My grace is sufficient for you. The world, and sadly churches too, often judge people, and we slot them according to our flawed ideas of what God likes and doesn't like. If somebody lives in a nice house and they drive a nice car, it doesn't matter how corrupt they are on the inside. It doesn't matter how perverted they are on the inside. If they wear nice clothes, they live in a nice house, they drive a nice car, we slot them higher. And I tell you something, God doesn't slot them higher. God sees all of us as flawed humanity, and He loves all of us, and He died for all of us. And that's why they call it good news. Sadly, if a man only has his possessions and he carries them in a backpack, if he struggles with addiction and he only has a few dollars to get him through the day, sometimes we are not so sure about him. Thankfully, as God washes over your mind and gives you more of his insights, you realize that God loved Dusty as much as he loved the preacher or the person that plays the piano or the person who is up here setting up the... God loves all of us the same. Aren't you glad God doesn't see things like we do? I'm glad he doesn't. The difference between a homeless man with addictions and the most mature, thoughtful man living is minuscule compared to any of us and the holiness and goodness of God. All of us, the Bible says, fall short. All of us fall short. Third thing, I know with all of my heart, I believe God received Dusty unto himself on that Thursday morning and said, "Come home, my child." I believe God received Dusty unto himself and said, "Come home, my child." That's why I want to give my life to telling people the good news about him. We don't serve God because we are afraid of judgment from God. We serve God because he is so good. We serve God because we know in his heart there's a place for Dusty. We serve God because we know in his heart there's a place for Ray. We serve God because we know in his heart there's a place for Doug. There's a place for each of us in his heart. His heart is so big. No more pain for Dusty. No more suffering for Dusty. No more sorrow for Dusty. No more sense of failure. You don't think he carried with him a sense of failure? You don't think there was times that he thought, why does this addiction keep kicking my butt? Why can I not get over it? Why do I constantly go back? There's no more sense of failure for Dusty. There's no more sense of failure for him. Thor said, from the moment he died and Thor received the news, he said, "I just can't help but get out of my mind that Kansas song, 'Carry On, My Wayward Son.'" That's a great song. The chorus says, "Carry on, my wayward son, for there'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. Don't you cry no more." And the fourth thing is this. That's why we serve and love God, is because he is so good. God is so good. I'm going to ask you guys to sing a song that we thought would just be real fitting for Dusty. I'm going to say another couple of things, and then we're going to conclude our service. But this song, to me, is a great song that sums up Dusty.
I know your life on earth was trouble, and only you could know the pain. You weren't afraid to face the devil. You were no stranger to the rain. So go rest high on that mountain. Son, your work on earth is done. Say go to heaven a shouting love for the Father and the Son. Oh, how we cried the day you left us. Gathered around your grave to grieve. Wish I could see the angels' faces when they hear your sweet voice sing. So go rest high on that mountain, son. Your work on earth is done. So go to heaven a shouting love for the Father and the Son. Go rest high on that mountain, for Dusty, your work on earth is done. So go to heaven a shouting love for the Father and the Son. So go to heaven a shouting love for the Father and the Son.
I was thinking of a little story a lady in our church told us. She had done something nice for Dusty. I forget what it was, something nice. And the next week he brought her some flowers. And he said, now I didn't steal these flowers. I thought that was sweet. He said, I asked for permission to pick them. And he gave her the flowers. I remember Joy said, good morning, Dusty. And he said, I didn't even know you knew my name. Thank you for calling me by my name. You know what? God brings all different types of people across our path. And I'm so glad Dusty had a church. I'm so glad he had a church. So glad he had a church. He was here on Christmas Eve. He wasn't feeling good. But he was here. He shared communion. Doug gave him communion right over here. And I just am grateful to God that he is the kind of God that he is. I grew up thinking that God wouldn't have a place for somebody that didn't fit the perfect mold, you know. But I realized God's grace is bigger than anything we know. And I'm glad the Village Church is that kind of a place.